Hello and welcome back to the Training Tom podcast, the place where I share how I am training myself to navigate through life in the hope that it helps you to navigate through yours as well. And today's episode is titled, What's Your Why? So let's get into it. My why has been something that I have been thinking about for the past couple of weeks, really, especially because of what I've spoken about on this podcast recently, about feeling a bit stuck, about not knowing what the progress is like with the podcast, and even questioning whether recording these episodes and releasing this content in a podcast form is even the right thing for me to do. So knowing what my why is, and essentially why I have started this podcasting experience, this podcasting journey, and reminding myself of that has helped me kind of re-establish my purpose for this podcast, and also helped give me a bit more motivation for wanting to find time and make time to record episodes and to plan content out as well. But I first of all want to take things back a step. And as we go through this episode, I want to focus on three things. First of all, I want to talk about what goals are. Second of all, I want to talk about setting effective goals. And lastly, I'm going to move on to talk about the why in everything that we do. Because I think that gives us a good grounding and a good foundation for when you set goals in the future and what your aspirations might be, maybe even for thinking about what your goals are currently and what your why is for achieving them. But let's dive into talking about what goals are first of all, because I talk a lot about goals on this podcast, and the goals that I have, the goals that you may have, but I haven't really touched on what goals are and why I think they're important. Now, for me, goals are something we strive towards. They are a future version of you that you want to create. They give you focus and they help guide us in a particular direction. Goals are and should be challenging. They should push us to change something, and they should make us feel uncomfortable. Because of this discomfort, goals can enforce change. And importantly, goals have meaning and they evoke emotions in us. And ultimately, it comes down to this one key point, in that the reason we set goals is because we want something to be different. We envisage a future version of ourselves that seems more appealing than who we are right now, or the situation that we are in right now. And often goals are set because we want something to change. We're not maybe enjoying the way that we are at the moment. We aren't getting what we want out of life at this moment in time. So by setting a goal, it gives us something to strive towards, but it also helps us imagine a future version of ourselves that we might like the look of and might want to strive towards as well. And perhaps will put us into a different situation than what we are currently in. So for me, that's why goals are important, and also linking in a bit with what goals are, in that, goals are something we strive towards. They are targets we set for ourselves that help create a different version of ourselves and help us learn about new skills as well. Maybe they even give us different knowledge and new knowledge too. So if we then start thinking about setting effective goals, what does that look like? Because setting effective goals can sometimes be really challenging. I usually come to fitness in this regard, because a lot of the time people will say, I want to lose weight, or I have a goal of losing weight. I have a goal of building muscle. I have a goal of being fitter. I have a goal of being healthier. But that doesn't really tell you what the goal is, how you're going to achieve it, what time frame you're going to work towards. and how you can overcome some of the challenges that might pop up. And one method of setting effective goals is to think of something called the SMART goal setting. I'm sure many people have heard of this before, but it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And those 5 areas give us an indication of how we can make our goals more specific and therefore make them more effective in how we achieve them and setting ourselves that target to strive towards. Often we look at goals as being quite outcome focused, and even that SMART principle is very outcome focused. Like I've already said, from a fitness perspective, we might say we want to be healthier, but there are lots of other goals out there. Like maybe we say we want more money. Maybe we want to live in a different place. Maybe you want to have a different career. Maybe you have goals in your relationships. These goals that we have can be for a variety of different reasons and can span across all sorts of different aspects of life. But all of them will relate to a different future to the path that we might currently be on. And they all are related to that outcome of I want things to look like this in the future, or I want things to be like this in the future. But they don't necessarily help us focus on what we can do to achieve that goal. They don't help us establish a plan to move towards achieving that goal. All of those, like I've said, are very outcome focused. And this is where the effectiveness of our goals can impact how and whether we even achieve them. Because, like I say, we often tend to focus on goals as being the outcome of what we're trying to achieve. But there's another version of goals that we can look at, which is process goals. And this is how we are going to achieve the outcome that we have set for ourselves. So if somebody says, again, using fitness as an example, I want to lose weight, well, how are they going to lose weight? What are they doing right now? Maybe they are not exercising at all. So maybe the process goal for this person is, in order to lose weight, I am going to exercise in the gym 3 times per week, and I'm going to reduce how much I eat. Maybe instead of having a chocolate bar with my lunch, I'm going to remove that chocolate bar and I'm going to replace it with a piece of fruit. Maybe instead of having dessert every day after my meal in the evening, I'm only going to have dessert twice a week. So that's a process goal that we can set ourselves, is by saying I'm going to exercise X number of times and I'm going to reduce how much I eat by doing X and Y. If we're thinking about money, maybe we have a goal of saving for a house, which is very relevant for me right now. I might say that I want to save up £30,000. That is the outcome of what I'm going to achieve. But how am I going to achieve it? That's the process that I'm focusing on. So my process might be, I am going to save £300 a month or £500 a month, or however much it might be. But every single month, I am going to save X amount of money. If you have a social goal, I'm going to use an example of a goal that I set myself, is that when I first started going to Run Club, to the new Run Club that I've been going to and I've spoken about on this podcast before, I set myself the goal of speaking to 3 new people every time I went there. Now, my overall goal might be to socialize more and to get to know more people. That's the outcome of what I'm trying to achieve. But the process of trying to achieve that is I speak to 3 new people every time I go to Run Club. And that means that I am meeting new people and I'm getting to know different people and I'm socializing a lot more, because I'm talking to new people every single time and I'm giving myself a clear objective every time I go to Run Club. So there's a few different examples there from a health and fitness perspective, from a finance perspective, and from a social and relationships perspective. And you might have goals that you're working towards at the moment that you've thought about the outcome, but have you thought about the process? So maybe my challenge for you at the end of this episode is to start thinking about the process of the goals that you're trying to achieve, and see if you have set yourself a achievable process in order to get to that outcome that you have set yourself. Then we move on to the important part, and this is your why. Why are you trying to achieve these goals or this goal? Why do you want to change something in your life? And why do you feel this goal will give you what you want? And the reason why I think establishing your why is so important is because it ties it to a meaning. Often in life, the things that we do are attached to our emotion. And when it comes to our goals, sometimes we don't really establish an emotional reason as to why we want to achieve them. However, people that do attach an emotional reason typically tend to achieve their goals because they are so driven by the emotions associated with that goal. So if we come back to fitness again, using that example of losing weight, everybody, or I would say most people, have a goal, especially as they get a bit older in life, of wanting to lose weight. But the why, the emotions behind why they want to achieve, or why they want to lose that weight, makes the goal individual to that person. For some people, it's because they're getting married. For some people, it's because their health has been impacted. For some people, it's because they aren't confident in their body. For some people, it's because they want to do an event and they need to lose weight for that event. There are so many different reasons why people want to lose weight or why they want to achieve these fitness goals. But until they are asked the right questions, or until they understand that why themselves, and they allow themselves to feel the emotions of the goal they've set themselves, sometimes they aren't fully committed to achieving that goal. So I'm going to use an analogy for this, because if you've been listening to this podcast a little while, you would have gathered I like to use analogies to explain things, and more from my own mind, it helps me visualize what the point I'm trying to make. And when I think about a why, and why somebody wants to achieve a goal, why it's important to them, I like to use the analogy of a boat and a lighthouse with this. Imagine achieving a goal is like sailing between 2 points. You have your current habits and behaviors on one side of the ocean and your future self on the other side of the ocean, with a lighthouse to guide your way. And you are in a boat in the middle of this ocean, sailing between these 2 points, and you're looking at the lighthouse for guidance and direction. Your why, the emotional reason of why you want to achieve those goals, is the lighthouse on the shore of the place you're trying to get to. It's guiding your way. If your why is strong, then this light is bright. And if the water gets a bit choppy, maybe you go off track briefly, you can still see the direction you need to head towards more clearly, and will often get back on track as a result, because the light is so strong and so bright in the distance. If you don't know your why, or it isn't very clear and isn't very strong, the light on the lighthouse is dim and difficult to see. So if the water gets choppy, or you stray off the path towards achieving your goal, you can't see the light on the shore as clearly, or maybe even at all. In this instance, it's much easier to turn around and go back the way you came. Go back to the shore that was behind you, that you were sailing away from. And it's interesting for me using that analogy, because I've been in both situations. I've been in the situation where the light on the lighthouse was really bright and it guided the way really clearly. But I've also been in situations where the light's been really dim and I've been striving towards things that haven't really felt true to me, or haven't really I haven't really thought about the emotional reasoning behind why I want to achieve that. Sometimes it could be because I think society expects those things of me rather than because I want to achieve those things. And with those weak goals and me not understanding that why strong enough, when I turned around and I went back towards the behaviors that I originally had and I didn't achieve those goals and I basically stayed the same, there were some instances where there was almost this perception of like, well, people around me told me that it wasn't going to work. And there was even maybe some of these questions of like, well, what was the point of even trying? Because yeah, it wasn't going to work out anyway. So why did you bother in the first place? But like I say, I've also had those strong goals and a strong why for achieving them. I've had that clear light on the opposite side of the shore that was my goal that I was sailing towards and trying to achieve. In those situations, when I was striving towards those goals, when things got rocky, when the water was choppy in places, and when I did stray off track, which would happen several times, I had such a strong why that I kept moving towards that light. I was able to get back on track and keep moving towards the light on the opposite side of the shore. And this meant that when I got there, I'd been on this journey, and journey is very cliched and it might be a bit cringy for people as well. But all of the challenges that I'd faced along the way changed me and made me, I like to think, a better human being. They challenged me, they taught me lessons that I wouldn't have found out otherwise. But it all started from having A, a goal, and B, a strong reason why I wanted to achieve that goal. And what I'm trying to say here is that it doesn't matter what your goal is. If you don't fully know the outcome that you want to try and achieve, maybe you don't even know the process of how you're going to get there. But what can be really powerful is no matter what that goal is and no matter how effective that goal has been set, if your why is strong and if you have a really strong emotional attachment to achieving this goal, then you will figure out the process and you'll figure out how you're going to achieve it. You might not know that process right now, but because of how strong that light is, you will do something to move towards it. And if you do go off track, which in the process of achieving goals is highly likely, you'll be able to find your way back on track a lot quicker. You'll be able to keep moving forwards towards that goal a lot easier, or should I say a lot more effectively, because of how strong that light on the opposite side of the shore is. It's going to guide your way the whole time. You'll also become more resilient in trying to achieve this goal as well. Because understanding that why will mean that no matter what challenges come up, you will want to overcome those challenges to keep moving towards that goal. I hear you asking though, but Tom, how do I establish what my why is? Because it sounds very easy and it sounds very simple, but sometimes we have to go deep within ourselves to understand what that why is and to earth or dig up the emotions of achieving that goal. And some questions that I would encourage you to ask yourself are, what will I feel like once I've achieved that goal? How will that future version of myself look? What situation will I be in? Who will be around me? How will I feel? Like I said, how will I feel within myself? Asking questions like, what is so important to me about achieving this goal? Or if you are a friend or a family member or a spouse of somebody, and they have a goal. Maybe you can sit down together and you can ask them these questions and they can ask you these questions back. But what is important to them or to you about achieving this goal? Why do you want to achieve this goal? How will you feel once you've achieved this goal? What will the future version of you look like once you've achieved this goal? There's so many more questions that you could ask around that future version of yourself, around what that goal means to you. But essentially, writing down, if you're on your own and you don't have people around you feel comfortable talking to, or if you do have people around you and you can talk to them about it, telling other people why this goal is so important to you, why you want to achieve it, how you will feel once you've achieved it, can make those feelings and those sensations real, but it can also hold you accountable to achieving that goal. So when you do feel a bit stuck, when you do feel like you're challenged with this goal, you will be able to overcome those challenges, but you'll also hopefully have a support network around you to guide you through those challenges as well. If you haven't got that support network around you, then writing these things down gives you something to look back onto. When you are feeling stuck, when you are feeling challenged, you can refer back to those notes and you can look at what you've written down. You can read why it was important to you. For some people, it might even be useful to record a voice note to yourself and record why those things are important, how you will feel once you've achieved that goal. It's an interesting exercise to do, and I've done this exercise with people where I've asked them the questions and I've asked them how they will feel and what they want to achieve, and trying to keep digging deeper and probing further. And admittedly, the person you're with has to be comfortable around you for you to do that. But personally, I feel like it's a really useful exercise for people, because it's one thing saying you have a goal, it's another thing thinking and feeling the emotions associated with that goal. But the stronger that emotional attachment can be towards achieving that goal, the more resilient you'll be when the challenges come up in the process of achieving that goal. And also, the more likely you are to achieve that goal, because you have this clear light that's guiding your way all of the time. And that is your why. If you want to know more about your why, I would encourage you to read a book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. I have read this book, but I will admit it was a long time ago. But Start With Why is highlighting everything that I've just mentioned in this episode. The why of achieving anything in life is just as important, if not more important, than the thing you're actually trying to achieve. So understanding your why is going to be the thing that drives you towards achieving that goal. And importantly, if you're able to share your why with other people, then it also means you have people to hold you accountable as well. In summary, goals help us strive towards something and often are related to a future version of ourselves that we want to try and achieve. Effective goals don't just focus on the outcome, but they focus on the process of achieving those goals as well. How are you going to achieve that goal? What are you going to do to get from where you are right now to the future version you want to be? And importantly, almost most importantly, understand why that goal means something to you. Because the stronger that why is, the clearer that path will become, and the clearer that guiding light will be, so that if you do go off track, if it does get a bit choppy in the waters, you have something clear guiding your way the whole time. And if you share that why with other people, then they can hold you accountable. They can support you and motivate you to make sure that you stay on track. Hopefully you've found this episode useful. I really appreciate everybody that listens to the podcast. And if you have any feedback, as I have been saying recently, I'm always open to hearing what feedback you have and the messages that you might have, but also the content that you might like to see me share on this page and on this podcast. But as always, my name is Tom Regan, and this is the Training Tom podcast.